Welcome back to Alberta Primetime, and on tonight's Focal Point, sounding an alarm that raising carbon tax to win U.S. approval for a key pipeline could cost jobs here. It's a tax on oil patch producers' pollution, and Premier Alison Redford is in Washington again tonight, but this time amid reports she'll raise carbon taxes to help convince the U.S. the bitumen pipeline Keystone XL should be approved. Let's ask our Monday Money panel what it thinks and what it means for Albertans. Todd Hirsch is a senior economist at ATB Financial. Michael Ganley is editor of Alberta Venture Magazine, and we should also mention the winner of this year's Editor of the Year award from the Alberta Magazine Publishers Association.
Thank you,
congratulations. And Shafik Hirani in tonight as well. He is a senior executive financial advisor with Investors Group Calgary. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for being here.
Good evening.
Todd, what are your thoughts? Today we heard from First Energy Capital in Calgary saying that higher carbon taxes in Alberta of, say, $40 a ton and targets to slash emissions another 40% would be a threat in Alberta, a job killer. Do you agree?
Well, it's hard to say. I haven't looked at all of the details. In fact, there really aren't too many details yet to look at. Anytime there's going to be a new tax or some sort of higher levy, yeah, it is going to be some sort of financial adjustment on the parts of the companies, the emitters. That said, I think everyone recognizes the $15 a ton, the current tax on carbon, is priced far too low. Now, exactly where it should be is hard to say, but I don't blame companies for wanting to stand up and say, look, this is going to make cause some financial hardship for us, especially right now when they're not doing particularly well for a lot of other different reasons.
Michael, the price on carbon makes ventures cover this month, actually. You wrote the feature piece. What did you find?
Well, I think the companies, almost all of them by this point, certainly the bigger ones, are all pricing carbon into their planning for their projects, and most of them would use at least a $40 per ton tax. Some of them use up to a $70 per ton tax because they're making investments for 30, 40, and 50 years, and they all expect that will come along at some point, whether it's now or later. And these are the international companies that are playing all over the world, not just Alberta. I mean, we're the ones sort of leading the way here right now and trying to push the bar a little higher. But these players are global, and they expect that price across the board. And
it certainly might make some of the projects more palatable in the environmental fight that they have on their hands. Shafik, the Globe and Mail reports Calgary oil executives were, quote, stunned in a meeting days ago, a meeting about raising carbon taxes with the federal minister and provincial minister of environment. The business appetite for the taxes in Alberta is mixed. Is it inevitable, though? Are we hearing, as these guests are saying, that it will come eventually?
Yeah, absolutely. It is inevitable. And to say that they're stunned, I think they're just a little political posturing. They, like Mike alluded to, they have seen this coming into fruition long ago. And at $15 per ton in terms of a tax levy right now, that's just simply not enough to handle the greenhouse emissions. So they can purchase carbon offsets, or they can pay the tax, and going up to $40 per metric ton is basically the next step. Many of them, it will cut the price or the productivity of all the projects in place, but they're not stunned. They saw this coming a while away.
Could this perhaps be a good safeguard against another uncontrollable, unhealthy boom? A little temper on Alberta's typical energy boom-bust cycle?
Well, I suppose if oil were still at $150 a barrel like it was back in 2008, you could say that, yeah, this is maybe now a really great time to do, just pull back on the reins a little bit. Now is questionable. I mean, that differential has narrowed, and that's all good news. But it's a little bit, it's a dicey industry right now. I understand the situation that the Premier and Alberta is in trying to negotiate with the U.S. government, though.
Do you think this proposal will carry a lot of weight with the White House?
I'm not sure. I mean, Michael might have some thoughts on that.
I think we can only hope so. I think it does set the bar and can certainly be used by the White House to help Obama to help justify going with the Keystone pipeline. And I think the company, if that happens, the companies will be more than happy to pay a $40 per tax ton.
And in your research of this topic for Alberta Venture Magazine, you found out, we looked at BC, it's been lauded for its 5-year-old tax, which is right at the pumps, adding about 6 cents a litre for consumers.
Now that's a broadly based carbon tax, right, as opposed to just geared to the large emitters. From the environmentalist point of view, they certainly prefer that, and I think from a societal point of view, if you're trying to change behaviors, people do have to see it at the pumps. It can't just be on the emitters of over 100,000 tons per year, as it is currently here in Alberta.
There's lots of other models out there.
That's right.
Meanwhile, we'll ask Shafik, what else are you watching from your desk in Calgary this week?
You know, this is an interesting time of the year. Earnings season kicks off tomorrow. If you take a look at the Canadian or domestically, housing numbers are going to be on the forefront of all the media over the next week. New housing numbers are released by StatsCan tomorrow. We're hoping for 175,000 new home starts. That should be pretty interesting. And in the States, the budget is out on Wednesday. So if you want to know what's going to raise a lot of political posturing, take a look at the budget on Wednesday.
When you look at those housing numbers, Shafik, why are you looking at them from an investor standpoint?
Okay, well, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you make money in your portfolio. And where people analyze their net worth, they look at two things. They look at GDP, or the growth of the economy. And if the economy is strong, people are more prone to spend money, which further enhances GDP, which enhances the stock market. Secondly, people's net worth is based on the equity they have in their house, which is the value of the house minus the value of their mortgage. And if they feel that they're worth more, they tend to invest more. That price, that demand increases the stock market, so you can be very bullish on the stock market or bearish based on those numbers.
We'll keep that in mind when we all look at that headline this week. Todd, what are you watching?
Well, similar to Shafik, I'm watching the building permits, which is more of a forward-looking number.
And more local?
And more local, because it breaks it down to Edmonton and Calgary and then outside of the two main cities. But it's a forward-looking indicator. You know, housing starts gives us information about what is happening currently and decisions made in the past. Building permits is one of the really great forward-looking indicators, giving a suggestion as where construction and investment in non-residential construction in Alberta. And I think right now Alberta's at a pivotal point. We're seeing some overall slowdown, not an unhealthy slowdown. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's a healthy slowdown, but we are seeing a little bit of moderation. So the building permits numbers this week, I think, will be interesting to watch.
Do you know what you're expecting, or any idea?
I'm still seeing a pretty balanced, so I'm not expecting a big jump up or down.
Michael, what's on your radar?
Well, you know, we've agonized a lot in Alberta recently about the spread between West Texas Intermediate and Brent prices, and that has narrowed a lot over the last little while. And I'm interested to see how that's going to affect the reporting season in the U.S. for the big oil and gas companies.
Okay. Next up, are you confident filing your taxes online? And are you sure you got all the deductions you could have? Plus, when will you retire? Will your mortgage retire with you? Our Monday Money panel is back with more.
Hair care services for Jennifer Martin provided by Charisma Hair Fashion.
Welcome back to Alberta Primetime and the Monday Money panel. A new CIBC poll shows most Canadians, Albertans included, do not expect to pay off their mortgages until they are 57. That average goal is creeping ever closer to retirement. Shafik, is this necessary in these days and times, or is this just poor planning of a new generation?
You know, Jennifer, I don't think it's necessary. As a matter of fact, a lot of affluent people don't have their mortgages paid off. You know, the last thing you want to end up doing is becoming asset-rich and cash poor. But your second point about poor planning, it's vital, and it's absolutely true. You know, you can't build a puzzle without a picture of the box, and I think if you're going to get towards a certain point, you need to target when you're going to pay off your mortgage, how much you're going to require in retirement. And you know, nowadays with mortgage rates so low, there's not necessarily the desire to pay biweekly and double up in your payments like there used to be back in the 80s and the 90s. So it's just a matter of planning properly.
Todd, 52% of Albertans also say they've taken on other debt since buying a house. National household debt, as we know, is at historic highs, and our population is aging, of course. Could all these things converge and create some kind of a looming economic crisis? And if so, what would that look like?
Well, it could, but I think the crisis is going to be individual households. There'll be certain individuals, no question, they are going to be in trouble. That's always sort of been the situation, but now with the high levels of household debt, there might be more of those individuals in trouble. I don't know if I'm too concerned yet about a national sort of crisis. The reason I'm not is that interest rates are so low and they're not going anywhere higher anytime real soon. Now, looking out 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's a different situation. If we were in a situation where interest rates are starting to go up and they're going up very quickly, I'd be more worried. But we're not in that.
Michael, in Alberta, is it buyers being caught up in booms and paying more than they should, or just the trend to upgrade to bigger and better, whether or not you can pay it off or not?
Well, I imagine it's a little bit of both, but I think with our incomes here too also being higher, we have to factor that into a calculation of whether or not we're getting in over our heads. And I think, as Shafik was alluding to, it really is a matter of overall financial planning. What are your savings like? What are your investments like, as well as your mortgage? And of course, this poll was self-reported, right? So what bearing that has on reality is sometimes an open question.
Albertans are also preparing their taxes now, and Revenue Canada is encouraging us to file online rather than mailing in hard copies. But at the same time, a study by BMO Nesbitt Burns finds 58% of Canadians are not even sure about how capital gains are taxed. 33% lack knowledge on taxation of charitable donations. Shafik, we might be getting more comfortable online, but why and how are we still missing good deductions?
Yeah, you know, that's a tragedy, and I'm glad you brought this up, Jennifer, because if you take a look, like a lot of time in the Money Panel, we talk about the stock market portfolios and what's happening in the economy and how that affects us. When I take a look at the average Albertan, you know, 50% almost of every single dollar we make goes to taxes. So I think, you know, I see people their whole lives trying to cut their grocery bill and their utility bill. Cut your tax bill, and I think it's important that people take an active interest in their current income and the current expenditures, and then work on ways to save taxes beyond just RSPs and TFSAs and things like that.
Do we know how much we might be giving the government that we don't need to?
Well, one thing is a matter of how much effort you're going to put into it. Now, if you really sit down with a tax expert, that's probably the best way to do it. But even if you get a decent online tax package and really spend a few hours with it and go through all the questions, it will highlight all the things you might be eligible for. But I think sometimes we're lazy. You know, we want to get it done with, you know, our TV show starting. We just want to file our taxes and be done with it. But that's a lazy approach because we will be missing deductions.
Final thoughts?
Well, I often recommend to people, yes, do your taxes yourself sometimes, especially in the early years when it's relatively uncomplicated. But now and again, go to a pro, sit down with them, have them go over it with you, pay that money to them, and then you can go back to doing it yourself again after you've learned from them some of the things you might have been missing.
And keep up with the rule changes. Todd Hirsch is a senior economist with ATB Financial. We want to thank him and all of our guests for being on tonight. Michael Ganley is editor of Alberta Venture Magazine, and Shafik Hirani is a senior executive financial advisor with Investors Group Calgary. Thank you all.
Thank you.